Hello, lovely people. Welcome to my channel. It's Hila here, Saturday Night Stitching. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you're having a fantastic day wherever you are. Well, it's yet another rainy summer day here in England. We've just had days on end of just rain, and the temperatures have been dropping to lower temperatures, and basically I'm wearing socks and I'm having to wear a couple of layers at least. So I'm not a very happy bunny for now, but on the plus side, I'm super excited that in a few days we'll be driving off with our tent and our camping kitchen and our camping bedrooms, and we're going to be spending 3 glorious weeks over in France and Italy, where I am absolutely certain there's just going to be some lovely sunny weather, because apparently the weather forecast is that it is going to be rainy like this in my part of the world all the way through August. So I am so happy that I'm going to be going away for 3 whole weeks. So yay for that. So anyway, I do apologize for the lighting. That's why the lighting is a little bit off. It's because it's just been horrible. And so I haven't really been able to record as much as I wanted to because of just how bad the lighting is. But we're just going to have to make do with what we have. So today's video, I'm really excited to be sharing with you these items that I have made, and I'll be talking through some of the issues that I had with the sewing patterns and some of the tips and tricks that I have in terms of how you might be able to navigate the pitfalls that I went through so that you don't have to. So let's get into it. But before we do, if you're new here, welcome. I love sewing. Let's talk more sewing and make it official by hitting the subscribe button and like it. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. You're the reason why this channel is where it is. Thank you for that. So we will start off with some shorts because I'm so super proud of these shorts that I've made for my husband. So the shorts are from over here. They're from Burda, July 2023, this issue, of which I was quite pleased to have managed to do a project in the month that the magazine is out. It's just a tiny little thing that I like to set a goal for myself. And immediately I knew that I was going to make shorts for my husband because it coincided with the time that we'd been doing a wardrobe audit for my husband and identifying that he didn't have shorts, and the last time that he had shorts that I'd made for him, they had just been worn to death and he'd found them comfortable, and he was basically saying, why haven't I made a pair of shorts recently? And so I did, and so I felt like this was quite a fortuitous appearance of a men's section in a Burda magazine during the season in which we needed to have that particular garment at a time where there was an actual need. And so I got into making it, and I traced it out pretty much straight away. The pattern pieces were quite easy to trace out. The pattern for the shorts is also the same pattern for the cargo pants trousers in the same issue. So you kind of have to be a little bit mindful of that because it does have a section where you have to connect the two pattern pieces, because obviously the Burda sheets are not wide enough for them to have a men's trouser piece all in one. So you have to have two bits that you join at around the just above the knee thigh area over there. So you kind of have to watch out for that. And for the shorts themselves, right, you actually need to trace out two pattern pieces. You have to trace out the short section that goes to where the knee is, and then you have to trace out the little bit that will make the cuff. That is if you want to make the cuff. So let me just show you what that would look like. So this is the back pattern piece, right? And so as you can see, I traced it up to here, this point, and then you had to trace this little section here that will fold over to make a cuff, and then you attach it onto the line over here. So I traced it out obviously like that, but plot twist, I ended up not doing the cuff itself, and here's why. The fabric that I chose to use is this lovely, I want to call it a gabardine like sort of fabric because it's quite thick and springy. And I'd used it before, and so I had a leftover bit that I felt fairly confident would be enough to make the pair of shorts, but it was just enough to make it without the extra fabric required in order to make the cuff. So I ended up eliminating the cuff because by the time I realized I didn't have enough, I'd already cut out the front pattern piece with the bit for the cuff, and no matter what amount of finagling I tried to do or sewing mischief when it came to lining up the pattern, I couldn't get away with being able to cut the back pattern pieces full length with the bit for the cuff, and that's because my fabric is got the stripe, obviously. But if it didn't have the stripe, I would have been able to do the tilting of the grain line up to about 5 degrees in order to try and get in that cuff, but I couldn't do that with the stripe. So I ended up having to eliminate the turn up cuff, but that's okay. The turn up cuff, I think, is a nice feature if you're using a plain fabric and it just adds a little bit more detail, but because this is a stripy fabric, it is quite fine. And fun fact, right, when I got my husband to try these on, so I got him to try them on before I attached the waistband because I wanted to make sure that it was going to fit him around the waist. By the way, in terms of sizing, I measured his waist and I selected the size based on his waist measurement. And I think when you're measuring for men, you have to, men don't necessarily have the waist at the same point as us women do. So for us women, it's the point at which our torso is the narrowest that's generally going to work as because your clothing will tend to fall onto there. So but with my husband, even though he's got quite a longer torso and he does have a bit on his torso that sort of goes in and is narrower, but it's quite high up, it's way above his belly button, so his waist is actually not necessarily the narrowest part of his torso, so it's a little bit lower, and he's a little bit specific about where he likes for his trousers and his pants to suit, so that is where I measure. And so that's what we had, and it was relatively accurate, but I just had to take it in by 1/2 inch to get it to sit perfect, which is not too bad considering that it was only a 1/2 inch adjustment on the waistband in order for it to sit exactly how he wanted it to. But when I got him to try it, right, he saw them and he thought, oh, it's quite nice. And it was late at night because he works in another city and he doesn't get back home until much later. And then the next day after we'd done the tracing, and it was like a full 24 hours later, he goes like, oh, have you finished my pirate pants? And I was like, what pirate pants are you talking about? And he said, well, you know, the stuff that you got me to try yesterday. So he basically saw the stripes and he thinks of them as pirate pants. So at first I didn't know whether to be amused or to be offended, but I decided to go with amused in the end with it. But yeah, so I'd managed to finish them and he loves them. So he tried them on. And then he just didn't take them off. He spent the rest of his evening downtime wearing them because he was like, they're so comfortable. And you'll see on the videos here, he's actually wearing them with the Burda 6602 t-shirt, a t-shirt pattern that I highly recommend. Is a really great one. I made it in a white jersey. And he was just comfortable in them. His one request was that I put a button hole. So sorry, so the shorts have just come out of the wash because he was wearing them over the weekend and it's a Monday today and they've been in the wash, so I haven't had time to iron them. So this is what the fabric looks like unironed. So on the back pocket here, he has requested to have a buttonhole and a button because he doesn't want his wallet to fall out or anything like that. So that's the thing, and he was very happy with the pockets, which I made the pocket lining in a contrasting fabric. This is from my scraps bag, and I did this simply because I just didn't have enough fabric to even make this, to cut out this particular pattern piece in the same fabric, because I was down to teeny tiny little scraps of fabric left. And then I didn't follow the instructions, the Burda instructions for the pockets, for the welt pockets. I thought that the instructions were actually quite good, up until you got to the welt pockets and up until you got to the fly front. But I really can't blame Burda for that, because I think fly fronts can be so, they're one of those things that you can only get the more you do them. And I'm still yet to find an instruction for sewing fly fronts zippers that has just been completely foolproof and has worked for me. And if you have any suggestions, please do let me know in the comments box down below, because that's an area of my sewing skill that needs improvement. So there's a lot of sewing mischief in how this fly front came to be. Yes, it's come out fashion side, looks good. There's nothing untoward. You wouldn't, because and think, oh, what's going on there? So in that regards, I did well. However, if we go onto the inside, there's so much mischief there, because I messed it up a bit, because I started off trying to follow the Burda instructions and they kind of lost me, and then I was trying to use other things and what have you. So I ended up using an amalgamation of different tutorials, because by the time I found great tutorials, they do it in the flat before they've sewn up the crotch seam. And those ones, they look really great. And in fact, the next time that I make these pair of shorts, and I do plan on making them, I will be using those particular tutorials, because of how it looks so much easier if you're sewing it in the flat first before you then sew up the side seams of the trousers and then the crotch seam of the trousers. But by the point that I was trying to put on the fly front, I'd already sewn up the side seams and I'd already sewn up the crotch seam right up until here. And I'd already overlocked and neatened up the edges, so I wasn't going to undo it. So I had to make do with the situation that I was in. So I ended up doing not having enough of an overlap, so I had to zigzag stitch another scrappy bit of fabric on there, so that there was enough for when I top stitched here. Yeah, it doesn't look very pretty on the inside here, but that's okay. I'm considering this to be a toile of this particular pattern, and it has become a wearable toile. I offered my husband the option of either a hook and eye fastening on here or a button, and he was hands down buttons. He prefers buttons because he finds them so much easier and he thinks that they last a lot longer. So this is the tail of the shorts. A lot of sewing mischief went on with these ones, but it is a wearable toile, and I think that they're lovely, even though my husband calls them the pirate shorts. I don't agree with that, but there we go. So one of the tasks that I have to do before we head out for a camping trip, because he's going to be taking these along with him, is I'm going to be adding some a buttonhole there so that he'll be able to do that. So that's that one. So that's Burda 7 2023 number, oh, I forgot to give pattern number, didn't I? Number 131, the Bermuda shorts. So yeah, very happy with these, highly recommend them. I will definitely be making them again in a plain fabric, in a like a cotton drill, which will be similar to a chino fabric. I omitted the belt loops because my husband just never wears belts with shorts. He just doesn't. So I just made sure that on the waist it's nice and snug, and that's worked really well. Okay, the next thing that I want to show you is another pair of shorts before I move on to the dresses, because I do have a couple of dresses that I want to show. And these are some shorts that I made from an Audrey magazine issue, and they're really fabulous, and it's shorts for the kids. So I ended up making 4 pairs. I was supposed to use a different sort of fabric for them, but it's a little bit different fabric, and I'm still gathering the courage to cut into it for shorts. So I told myself I need to make some toiles first. I need to make some toiles, and I used some cotton wax print fabrics that I have loads of to cut them out and make these pairs of shorts, which have turned out to be very lovely and comfortable, and the kids actually like them. So this is one of the pairs of shorts over here. So this is a wax print fabric, so it's 100% cotton, and they're very nice and comfortable with the waistband here. It's elasticated, and I've added some top stitching to give it these 3 lines of top stitching over there. They have a back pocket. Look at that. And they've got the hip yoke pockets. Actually, I did bum pockets on both of them. So I've made 4 of these, and they've gone to the 3 youngest ones because my twins and their older brother, there is only maybe about this much height difference, so they can kind of get away with wearing and interchanging stuff. I did make a sewing tutorial for these because it's just so much fun to make, and definitely will be making more of those, and I'll link that in the description box at some point. So these were really good, and with Audrey design ones, you have to measure. You can't go just by the year, because a lot of patterns they will tell you, oh, 6 to 8 years, but with Audrey you actually have to measure the chest if you're making a top, and you have to measure the waist and the seat. Is it called the seat? You know, the widest part of their bum, basically. And that will tell you what size you need to make, because they don't have a lot of ease, particularly if you're used to sewing with the big 4. But I do highly recommend Audrey patterns if you want to sew something that looks very much like what you see on the pictures, because with the big 4 they put in so much ease in them that sometimes you end up with something that is much baggier than you had expected. They don't come with any seam allowances. You have to add on the seam allowances, unless if it tells you that seam allowances are included in the pattern piece. So normally some of the rectangular pattern pieces might include the seam allowances, and usually when they do that, they'll tell you what the seam allowance is, and it usually tends to be a 1/2 inch or 3/8 of an inch. So that's a quick little primer on Audrey. So I thought I'd chuck these in here because they're shorts, and I was going to be talking about the shorts, and I was very happy. I had so much fun doing the batch sewing for this because I sewed 4 of them in one go, and it was just, and I really liked that. I really liked that. There was a part in me that was just kind of like happy and singing and got into a zen-like state. Okay. The next thing that I want to show you is an indie sewing pattern, the Avid Seamstress, the sundress. It's a dress that I really love. I've made it before, several times before, and in fact this one is my 3rd one. This time I made it in a cotton poplin with a herringbone print in a very light teal and white. And I was attracted to the colors because they really fit in with my color palette, so they're cool. You can't get much cooler than this. Although in terms of saturation of the colors, then it's not very, very saturated, but it's still a cool color tone. And so I was quite excited when I did get the fabric because it looked really lovely. And I got stuck on what to make with it because I was thinking, oh, should I make a shirt? Or should I make a dress? And if I make a dress, should I make it a maxi and whatever? So it took a while for me to actually settle on what to make with it, which is a process that happens to me, particularly when I really fall for a fabric. And so I ended up on the sundress because I love that dress and it's so wearable, and I wear it so much, particularly in summer, which is quite annoying because I'm not able to wear as many of my summer dresses because the weather is not cooperating, but c'est la vie, c'est la vie. Yeah, so I made it, and because I've made this before, it came together really quickly for me. I did the pleats on the skirt. I really wanted to have a contrast band for, you know, the part across the bodies, but I just could not find a perfectly matching color because this color is quite unusual. The blue of that dress is quite unusual. I could not find anything that was just the perfect match, and so after a while I gave up trying to get that, because then I thought, oh, I'm now beginning to get stuck in analysis paralysis, and actually it's better sewn than perfect, because sometimes I can use that as an excuse to procrastinate on a precious fabric because I don't want to cut into the precious fabric because I'm scared of committing in case I make the wrong decision, and then I think, oh, I'll never get a fabric as precious as this again. But it isn't true. It's all a lie, because there's loads of beautiful fabrics out there and loads of beautiful things to make, so it's better sewn than perfect. So I was just like, right, you've tried this 3 times, you haven't been able to get the right one, you've gone to the shops, you haven't been able to get anything that matches, we're just going to go ahead with it. And it is lovely. I love it. I absolutely love it. On cooler days I'll wear it. I've got this vintage white cardigan, which is a Marks and Spencer's one. And it works really well. Again, it came together very easily because I've sewn it before. It's got the pockets, so I made the pockets in a different color, which is a quilting cotton over here. Sorry, the sun, we're losing the light effectively. But this, yeah, so this was something that I was very happy with, and I decided to go with a contrasting red buttons. I've got loads of vintage buttons. It's crazy. I need to actually declutter my buttons, but I thought that they worked really well because my plan, what I saw was that I would always be wearing it with a bright red shoe or a bright red earrings, and so I thought that the buttons would just add a little bit of a pop of contrast, and also to give the eye a rest from the herringbone chevron, because it's got quite a lot of interest in it, but I feel like the buttons, they help to sort of centralize it. Yeah, so that was that one. I love the fact that the poplin holds the shape of the pleats, so when I'm wearing it, it looks more like a 50s style dress, whereas with the rayon sundress that I have, it looks more boho feel because of how drapey and straight down it goes, whereas with this one it holds the structure of the skirt, and I feel very, very pretty in it. So I was very happy with that one. Okay, now we come to the belle of the ball, the pièce de résistance. Ta-da! I love this dress so much. I decided that it was going to make a guest appearance on the mannequin, so I had to go downstairs and bring it up, zip it up on here, and then place it perfectly here. So this is a dress from Burda for 2020. You know, April is my birthday month, and I've always expected Burda to particularly do a great job with the April issue because it's my birthday month. Anyway, this issue has come through again for me. So, okay, I'm just going to briefly talk about this issue because I've gone through this issue again, and obviously this is from 3 years ago, was coming up to nearly 3.5 years ago. And I got to see it again in a new light, and I actually didn't realize what a banging issue this is. This is actually a really, really good issue, particularly their section on the screen legends stuff. So I love watching old films. I really love the old films from the 1940s, 1930s, 40s, 50s, some from the 60s, fewer in the 70s, and some from the 80s. But here, right, this particular one is dress 103, and it's based on the Audrey Hepburn dress over there. So I remember seeing this and thinking, oh yeah, no, it's quite all right, but I wasn't like, I'm gonna make it, because I actually I made 101 from this issue, the Pretty Woman dress, and I made it in a navy background, white polka dot fabric. And let me tell you, this dress is a hero piece in my wardrobe. If I have a function that I have to go to and I just want to be elegant, chic, understated, not center of attention or anything like that, I just wear this with my belt and my navy slingback coats and my bag, and every single time I get so many compliments in it. It's just got this simple, understated elegance because of the cutaway shoulders and the neckline, and it doesn't have any visible stitching, particularly when you then put on a belt. So it's so incredibly elegant and really nice. I really, really highly recommend this dress because I get that so recently. Actually, it had a recent outing last week on Friday. We went to Birmingham because my niece was graduating with her degree in economics and business management. It was such a proud day for all of us. So the whole family, we showed up. We were dressed up to the nines. My girls were in their Love Notions tempo dresses, which have got the lovely cherry print, and my husband was wearing the navy blue McCall's M6044. And because I'm the auntie in the situation, and in my culture, the auntie is you have a very matronly and an elevated role in the family, because you are the one that, if when my niece wants to get married, I'm the first one that she goes to, and I become the go between my niece and her parents to say, okay, she's found a guy. So it's a very important role being the auntie in my culture. And so I really wanted to show up with that, matronly elegance. And this just did it. It was just and again, just the compliments come in. I mean, I don't think as seamstresses we sew our own clothes for compliments. I certainly don't do. I'm not thinking, oh, I want to do this so that I'm going to get. But it is really nice when you make something, right, and then you wear it and it aligns with the vision that you have of yourself in your head. I never used to understand the people that would talk about, oh, you can use your wardrobe to be able to live authentically or anything like that. But I kind of get it now, particularly when I create my own garments and I wear it, and it feels very effortless when I'm dressed up in it because it suits me so much and it feels like me so much that that is what people are responding to. And it's almost as if the garment itself is an afterthought because they recognize that there is something there, and then they're like, oh, is it the dress? Where did you get this dress from? You look lovely. It's not just the dress is lovely. So I think that that's been the biggest difference ever since I had my colors done and I've dived into styling and understanding image IDs and how to create harmony with your outfits, is that the compliments switch from, oh my gosh, I love your dress. Where did you get that dress from? I want to get that dress, to, wow, you look so lovely. You look really great in that dress. So it becomes that they see something in you, which I think is the authentic essence that's shining through because you're comfortable in yourself and you're presenting yourself how you see, how you feel as yourself inside. And then they look for what is it that is making this person have this essence which they're so comfortable in themselves. And so some will be it's the dress, or some will be it's the hair, or it's the makeup. But because I tend to keep my hair in very simple styles and I always go for the more naturalistic makeup, this is as much makeup as I'll put on because when I'm recording I can look a little bit washed out sometimes. So then they tend to automatically fall on the garments. But that's just my theory about it. But it is quite a nice feeling when you do create something like that and it's comfortable, easy, and effortless when you are wearing it, that, it is recognized. So this 101 is a great one. Sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent there. It seems like I've got a lot to say. But this was a great issue. So there was this one. So I've made this one before and it went down really well. So this time when I had this really lovely fabric here, right, I was really stuck. I very nearly made it into a Giselle maxi, and then I traced out a pattern from Now and Then Patterns, the All Seasons dress, and I thought it was going to be that. But then there was just something that was nagging at me, and I was like, hang on. What was that Judy Garland thing in that thing? And so I then had to dig through all of my my line drawings to see which, because I knew there was something there, but it was like a fuzzy idea digging around. And it's a lot of fun actually digging through your Burdas. I haven't done that in a long time, but I did it and I had so much fun. I ended up creating a longer sewing queue from the things that I was like, oh, I want to make that. But that's another story for another day. So we ended up with this, and the moment I saw this one, it clicked for me. It was just like, yep, that's the one that I'm going to make. But I decided to eliminate the ties on the shoulders because I've been blessed with these really massive shoulders, right? They really do not need any extras on them to make them seem even bigger. So I eliminated those. I went, so I did a portmanteau of the two versions of the dress. So you have the one that's got the pencil skirt, which is styled as a pinafore in the magazine. So I took the top of that one because that just has straps on there. And then I took the skirt from the other one that's got the bows. So the skirt pattern pieces, for anybody that is interested in making this, where did I put the skirt pattern pieces? Ah, right. So this is an 8-gore skirt, right? So if you don't mind, I'm just going to go into a little bit of a detail about this. So this is an 8-gore skirt, and you have to trace out these pattern pieces, and you have to trace out 4 of them, and then you cut 2 of each, right? Now, you know me, I don't like to be wasteful with my baking parchment, because the baking parchment in my house is multi-purpose. If it's not being used for tracing patterns, it's being used for baking, and we're big bakers in my family. So I don't like to be wasteful about it. So I always want to make sure, do I really need to trace out this pattern piece? Is it exactly the same? And what I did was I did check, and I found that you could just about get away with only tracing 2 of the pattern pieces and then cutting those out 4 times. And it worked. So that's a little tip there. So, however, when you do that, just remember to mark the seam numbers, right? And remember to mark which side is going to have the zipper on it on the back. So that saved me a lot of baking parchment paper, which I was very happy about. But also the nice thing about an 8 gore skirt, right, as opposed to say doing just a circle skirt. So I could have gone ahead and I could have just done a circle skirt edition on here, and that would have taken less time to do. It would have made the project that much quicker. But I felt that it didn't fit the design lines, because this has got a center front seam over here, and then we've got a princess side seam over here that has a Dior dot, that is to say a bust dot, adding shaping on a princess panel, sorry. And then you have the waist. And so I thought that in terms of design, it's actually nice having the center front seam with the center front on the skirt as well. And also the way that it then moves, it's got this really lovely delicate flair to it, because your panels, if we look at them back here, right, our grain line is down there, so it falls like that, and these ones are slightly on the bias, and you get a bit more drape on the bias. So at every point where this is sewn on, it creates almost like a little delicate drape on it, and it's so lovely. It's got a beautiful flair that is not quite as ostentatious as, say, your circle skirt flair, if that makes sense. And that is because the addition of the seams that you have on there, it gives it a little bit more stability, a little bit more grounding, because it's got those seams. And it's one of those things that you really have to try one of these days. If you have a lot of time to do some sewing experiments, right, make a circle skirt in the same fabric and make an 8 gore skirt in the same fabric, and you see what I mean about the flair. So I dare I say it, I'm a big fan of the circle skirt, but the 8 gore skirt is definitely tugging at my heartstrings, because I really love how elegant it feels, and when it catches the breeze, it sways by so beautifully. So yeah, this was definitely a project with a lot of love going into it, because it's a vintage style pattern. I think Audrey Hepburn is a massive style icon. I've got several books about her style and about her life. So I'm a big fan of the overall aesthetic that they managed to achieve with her during her career as a movie star. So I feel as though that's a silhouette that certainly works for me quite a lot. And I love how I look and how I feel in this particular dress. Sewing it actually comes together really quite fast, because it's fully lined, right? And so it was just a case of sewing up the front bits and then the back bits, and sewing them together, and then doing the fitting in the process. The other beauty that I think this pattern has, one of the major advantages that it has, is because it's got all of these pattern pieces and all of these seam lines, right? This would work so well even for somebody who's bustier than I am. So I'm not quite busty. I'm relatively quite flat-chested. What you see comes from the wonderful Marks and Spencer's bras that I get, and it looks great. But if you've got a more shapelier bosom, you are able to get this to fit you beautifully because of the Dior dots. So princess seam lines are really fantastic anyway for bust shaping. You can really get fantastic tailored shapes with that. But you add in the Dior dots that cuts across the princess seam line, you've got even more shaping. So it's really fabulous. And certainly if you go check out on the Burda community, there's so many wonderful versions of this dress that have been made, and it's absolutely lovely. Another thing that I did do was I added pockets, guys, because pockets are everything. And it's really lovely to be able to just put my hands in my pockets in this dress. Really wonderful. I couldn't bear to have the hem marred by a stitching line across it, so I sat down and I very patiently hand stitched a blind hem, and so it doesn't have, you know, the line across in a contrasting color. It looks so elegant. Really, really love it. The lining is the Bamberg rayon lining that I got from Italy, and it's soft as a cloud, so it's so comfortable to wear. On the waist, I gave it a little bit of slack. I didn't want it too tight on the waist because my plan is to make a fabric covered belt that matches or contrasts with this, because I think that that would also look incredible. I think the cotton sateen was a really great match for this particular dress style, and it worked really, really beautifully. So I love this dress. I really, really love this dress, and I'll definitely be making another one of those. And I think I would love to make it in a navy blue fabric, maybe a cupro or something like that, but just something where I can just really focus on getting the tailoring just right, because bright colors they're fabulous. They're really, really fabulous, but you can hide a lot of sewing mischief behind bright colors and bold prints. But I would really love to make this in just a really elegant, or maybe a worsted wool even. I'd love to make that. So coming back to Burda for 2020, I'm definitely inspired by a lot of the stuff within the movie Screen Legends section. So I do think that this Bonnie and Clyde inspired jacket and skirt set is something that one of these days I can see myself wearing a beret, you know, just like Bonnie in Bonnie and Clyde. Could do that. The one that I didn't quite like as much is 102, and that's the dress from the Sean Connery Tippi Hedren film Marnie, which wasn't a I really didn't like that film when I watched it. I think it was one of those films, it was an Alfred Hitchcock, it was one of the Alfred Hitchcock films that made me decide I didn't like Alfred Hitchcock films, and I just stopped watching them. So part of me is also like, well, I don't really like the film. I didn't really like the character, so I don't want to dress like the character, even though Tippi Hedren looked amazing in the wardrobe for that film. It looks amazing, but I'm not drawn to making it because I didn't particularly like the character of Marnie. Let me know if you've actually watched Marnie. It's one of the lesser popular films, but Hitchcock, one of the lesser popular Hitchcock films, but I watched it because I'm a huge Sean Connery fan. So I'd finished watching all of the Sean Connery Bond films, and so I was looking for all the other Sean Connery films to watch because, whew, Mr. Connery. Yeah. And then you have this one, this 1950s style here, as worn by Grace Kelly in Rear Window. With James Stewart, which I watched not necessarily because of Grace Kelly, but I watched because I also really like James Stewart ever since I watched him in It's a Wonderful Life, which is a staple for our Christmas holidays. I've been slowly going through his filmography and watching his films, and Rear Window was one of those that I watched, and I thought that it was quite decent. But at the time, I really wasn't aware that Grace Kelly then went on to become Princess Grace of Monaco. And yeah, but I think that that's quite cute. I like the halter neck style on it. So yeah, overall, I think that this wins in my books, and I will definitely be making more of those. So those are the 4 things Uh, Actually, it's not four. It's eight if you count the fact that the shorts, there's four of them that I've made. This ended up being a super long video, and I do apologize about that. But at least I didn't split it into two separate videos, and then that would have been even longer. If you've watched until the end, thank you so much. You rock. You are a rock star. I am going to be away on holiday, traveling across Europe. I'm not yet sure how my data is going to be affected, but it's unlikely I'll be able to respond to comments as quickly as I was doing before. However, I would love to know who's watched until the end. And if you have, can you use dragon? That's it. If you've watched until the end, can you use dragon or dragon emoji? Because you rock, you're amazing. And I really do appreciate you. If you haven't already, do like and subscribe. Although having watched until the end is an incredible and amazing thing, and I really do appreciate that. And until I see you next time, lovelies, happy sewing. And you can go over to Healer at Home to keep up with my camping adventures. I am going to try my best to be vlogging our trip over there because the rest of our extended family over in Africa and in America, they want to see what we're going to be doing during our 3-week holiday. So that's going to be my way of sharing it with family, and I'd love to share it with the sewing community on here. So that's it, guys. Ta-ra now. Bye.